What's up, everybody? It's Scotty here with Flat Track Flashback, and well, that's a wrap on the 2025 Progressive American Flat Track season. The series came to a close Saturday, September 13th at Lake Ozark Speedway there in Eldon, Missouri. We saw the American Flat Track Mission SuperTwins champion crowned in a title fight that went down to the last round of the season, and unfortunately, we also saw a pretty dramatic incident there at the beginning of that race, and we'll get into all that and much, much more. So yeah, let's get this bad boy rolling. So it was another really hot day there to cap off the season. The commentators even kind of joking with how much grief they got for mentioning how hot it was at Peoria. But yeah, temperatures in the 90s, hot, dry, dusty there in practice and qualifying. The track was laying a lot of rubber, and we saw probably, at least from what I can remember, the most established blue groove that we've seen in quite some time with American Flat Track competition.
Bring me, baby.
Even so, it would start to widen out a little bit throughout the night. There were riders who were able to make passes happen both above and below that sort of established grooved up line. And yeah, a little bit wider groove in 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4. 3 and 4 was a little bit tighter of a racing line, whereas 1 and 2 guys seemed to have a little more room to run on a racing line throughout the night. And look, call me a loser, but I thought it was really cool usage of the drone, like hovering right above the track, looking down on the facility. You get to see the groove and where the riders are running throughout. I think that's a really cool element that Flo does on some of their car racing broadcasts as well, especially when bikes or cars are at speed and get to see them go around the track and the different lines being used. Always thought that was a really neat element. However, whoever was using that General Lee car horn and found a microphone or wherever that was quite obnoxious and also very startling. Was glad to see that kind of went away after a few usages and didn't carry into the night session with the broadcast. Cool to see Ricky Rackman back. Kristen Beat unable to be at this event, but Ricky's such a nice guy, and really glad to see him back on the broadcast team there as just a different perspective and a new element to the show. And the one thing I will say that was a little bit of a bummer, and we kind of saw it last year as well, was just the rider counts for Lake Ozark just aren't very high. The crowd support was phenomenal. The crowd showed out, lots of fans in the stands. Really great to see that support with the bike rally going on in town as well. But man, probably the lowest singles rider count of the year at just 18, which is a little bit of a bummer. To have the season finale with only 36 total riders in the house. I know we get not the highest rider counts in the twins class when we go to California, but our singles numbers had been up in the 20s all season long. So to see it into there in the teens was a bit of a bummer. It's a lot of support from the fans. Just don't know if Lake Ozark is the best finale going forward, but there was a lot of stuff going on throughout the States and then the race up in Canada, which we'll talk about briefly as well. So riders kind of getting pulled in different directions, and if you're not in the title fight, maybe just not as much of an allure to go down to Lake Ozark for that finale. But another element that I thought was really, really special on the broadcast, very moving, was the tribute to Ryan Varnes and sort of the discussion about the RV68 Foundation that his family has started. Just a very powerful little feature that they did. We got to hear from Kevin Varnes, Ryan's father, and Briar Bauman as well, and briefly from Corey Texter in that. And just a really, really special piece to sort of tell a story about one of the families of our sport. It's something that I would love to see a lot more of on the production side of things with American Flat Track, being able to get behind the scenes and learn about these riders. Unfortunately, this particular one having to talk about a very tragic scenario, but very well put together, very well done, and highlighting the tribute that they did for Ryan at Port Royal a couple years ago, and just getting some more information out about the RV68 Foundation. We'll post a link here in this video if you want to check that out and help support them. I'm very lucky to have that organization still involved in helping with scholarship funds and letting Ryan's legacy live on. Never really got the chance to talk with Ryan myself, but I've had a few conversations with his dad, Kevin, and remember Kevin's first national win there in Hagerstown, Maryland. It was a night that me as a little kid, I could not handle the heat, and I went home, but my dad stuck it out and filmed from the infield. And yeah, really cool to see Kevin pick up a victory there. And we got to see Kevin race on some of the Mars events throughout the 90s and be a really, really competitive rider. We got to witness him win races in Charlotte and Frederick, Maryland as well. Just great to see Kevin still involved in the sport, and despite just unimaginable tragedy. We'll lead off with the twins class because that's where the title fight was. That's where the 13 points between Dallas Daniels and Briar Bauman would decide who would take over the throne that Jared Mees left after retiring. And Dallas and Briar have given us such a championship fight all year long. It's been a really amazing championship battle that I've been very invested in all year. These two guys, we've talked about how much passion they have for the sport, how much it means for them to be in the hunt for a championship, and how much the sport means to them. And throughout the day, Briar just seemed to have that Harley hooked up. Maybe not the most thrilled given the situation at times, as you could see during his interviews, but Briar fast all day. And Dallas, some struggles early on in qualifying, but kind of learned to just never really put a whole lot of stock into what these guys do during the qualifying efforts. We've seen at several points throughout the year them come from less than ideal heat race starting spots to pick up victories in those, and to just be strong when the lights are on and the main event comes up. So wasn't too concerned about that. Dallas did end up coming home with a fifth overall in qualifying, and it set up sort of a mini bout between them in their heat race. That first heat race saw Briar and Dallas face off, and Briar would get a really good launch, kind of drift wide, and Dallas would get underneath him, but Bauman able to make the pass back a couple laps later, and Dallas would end up in a little bit of a fight with Trent Lowe before Lowe would have a bike issue with a couple laps to go, and he would end up DNF. He would end up with a DNF in that heat race. So Briar comes home with the heat race victory. Dallas second. They would move on to the dash. In the second heat race, Harley still looking good. This time, Brandon Robinson aboard his machine gets the lead, checks out from a pretty good battle with Declan Bender, James Ott, and Bronson Bauman. Bender making that higher line work around the racetrack. And he and Bronson had a bit of a moment in 3 and 4, a little bit of contact. They went wide. James Ott comes through, takes over second. Bender almost able to answer back and get back into that dash spot, but not quite able to do so. James Ott would come home second behind Robinson. Those two would move on to the Mission Challenge later in the night. With the last chance showdown for the twins class, only 3 riders would show up. No Jared Vanderkoy, no Logan Eisenhard. So unable to make the call there. It would just be Daniel Poole, Logan McGrain, and Trent Lowe in this last chance. Trent, really bad start in this. Logan McGrain out front early, but Trent able to run him down, make the pass, and come home with a victory there. Putting himself into that main event. The Mission Challenge on the night was kind of a carbon copy of that heat race with Briar Bauman and Dallas Daniels. You see Bauman get the launch off the line, but Daniels gets up underneath him, and they're side by side for that opening lap. Eventually, Briar able to get around the outside and prevail and hold on to the lead, and he wouldn't really be challenged. Daniels, Ott, and Robinson were close behind, but not able to really make a true attack on Briar in this race. So he comes home with an extra $5,000 from Mission Foods, and that $5,000 is going to go a long way in helping buy some diapers or maybe a crib. Hey, maybe you throw some spinners on a stroller and ride around in style, something like that. As we move into the main event, we talked about Jared Vanderkoy and Logan Eisenhard not starting the last chance race. Neither rider would use a provisional on the night, so no Eisenhard and no Vanderkoy. And a real bummer for Jared and that fast track racing team. They've had a lot of struggles, here at the end of the year with they get the podium at Peoria, but then Springfield is kind of a nightmare, and unfortunately not able to make the start here in Ozark, a track that Vanderkoy podiumed at in 2024. So we'll have to see what the offseason has in store for JV20, and just hope all the best for them as they move forward. And just a real bummer not seeing Jared able to sort of fight for that 4th spot in points. He was in that battle with Fisher and Lowe in points, but not able to start the main event. He has to settle for 6th on the season championship. As this race gets underway, it's Dallas Daniels, James Ott, Briar Bauman, Ben Lau, Brandon Robinson in a really tight pack to start the race. First couple of laps, Daniels out front early. Ott makes a challenge. Daniels answers back. And then going into turn 3 in the early laps, Robinson pokes a nose under James Ott. He kind of slips wide a little bit. And then coming off of turn 4, down the front straightaway, contact with Briar Bauman and James Ott sends Ott down on the front straightaway. And with nowhere to go, Billy Ross collides with him. Dalton Gauthier gets collected in this and goes tumbling down the track along with Billy Ross. And it looks like Ross's bike actually lifted up and knocked Logan McGrain off of his machine as they were heading down the front straightaway into turn 1. Just a very scary, violent chain reaction down the front straightaway. We did see McGrain and Gauthier kind of hobble off and out of the way. Billy tumbling down the track. He was seen sitting up. And at the time of recording this, haven't gotten a report about Billy just yet, but it was good to see him sitting up and alert, talking to people. We also got to see sort of a POV camera there on the front straightaway of James Ott, but James would end up getting transported by helicopter to a hospital, several fractures in his tibia, fibia, in his femur, broken pelvis, lacerated bladder. Very, very thankful to see a report from G&G Racing on Instagram to see that James is in good spirits, and they just have to kind of navigate these injuries and heal up. And so we send all the best wishes out to James and Billy, Dalton, and Logan, and wishing you all a speedy recovery, and just glad to see that everybody is alert and okay after that very, very scary crash down the front straightaway. Just a super high impact zone, not where anybody wants to go down. They brought up sort of the terrifying incident that happened at Charlotte, where Bauman had a similar situation, crashing on the front straightaway, and where Halbert got collected in that and went flying down the front straightaway there at Charlotte. Just one of the most dangerous spots to have a rider go down, and just very, very blessed to see that everybody was alert after that incident. On the restart, Daniels gets the lead over Bauman and Ben Lau, but Breyer quickly pounces on Dallas, able to get up underneath him and take the lead. And from here, there wasn't a whole lot of activity in this main event. If we're being honest, the main event kind of ended up being relatively boring. Robinson able to get by Daniels soon after Breyer made the pass, and those two kind of settled into first and second. Trent Lowe would fight from that back row starting spot, that last chance win, to get up and kind of mix it up with Dallas for third. They exchanged third a couple of times, one lap, but Dallas ends up getting back around and would hold on for that spot. Behind them, Ben Lau, Bronson, Bauman, Davis Fisher had a nice little tussle briefly for fifth, but that would end up settling with Bronson settling into fifth spot. And yeah, as we come to the end of the race, Breyer gets the Harley sweep of the night, quick time. He and Brandon winning heat races, Breyer winning the dash, and then the main event. So big Harley sweep there for the bike rally. And Breyer Bauman gets the victory over Brandon Robinson, another podium for Brandon on the year, and coming home third and claiming the 2025 Mission AFT Super Twins Championship is Dallas Daniels Estenson Racing with a sweep of both championships on the season. And just a big congratulations to Dallas. Regardless of the opinion on the Springfield thing, Dallas has put together an amazing Super Twins career as an incredibly deserving champion. We look back at 2023, and he was tied with Jared Mees coming into that finale doubleheader at Springfield, and Jared just got the better of him there. And then Dallas's amazing season in 2024 prior to the injury, and this year just a true sort of redemption arc for Daniels coming in. Handful of rule changes, and they were pushed all season long by Breyer Bauman coming into the year. There was a lot of chatter about Dallas was going to walk away with this, and he did anything but that. He and Breyer pushed each other week in and week out, and Dallas's consistency, and just it comes down to one race, really, and that's what we've talked about, how difficult it is to win these championships. If you have one result outside of a top five, or maybe even off a podium, you better have a couple of more wins to combat that and get the balance back, because Breyer and Dallas were just on their A game all year long. Dallas talked about on the podium how stressful the year had been. They came out strong, and then just were a little bit off for a while there in May, and those races in California, and then kind of bounced back in Lima, and I got the win in DuQuoin. But then Breyer was really putting it on him, and just what a championship fight these two gave, and just the emotion spilling out of Dallas Daniels there in victory lane. We talk about how much it means to him, how much he shares that this sport just means everything to him. He mentioned from being 6 years old, his ultimate goal was to win a Twins championship in flat track racing. And congratulations to Dallas, a very deserving face of the sport. And that 3-2 becomes a 1. Congratulations to Dallas Daniels on that Super Twins championship. Dallas's main challenger, Breyer Bauman, on the year, that Harley was up in the fight week in and week out, pushing Dallas to the limit. These guys brought out the best of each other, and we're just on another level all season long. And Breyer, statistically, his best season of his career. It's unfortunate that only one rider can walk away with the number one plate. And, on paper, you'd almost think that this would have been Breyer's championship, but that DNF just really, really took it away from him. Nonetheless, Breyer, 8 wins on the year. Only 5 riders have achieved more wins in a season than that. And that's Ricky Graham, Scott Parker, Jared Mees, Bubba Schobert, and Chris Carr. And Breyer's 8 wins over 16 races, only Scott Parker was able to get more wins in that time frame when he picked up 10 wins in 1989. An incredible season for Breyer. He's now 34 wins all time, which ties him with Bubba Schobert on the all-time wins list. Only 3 behind Kenny Coolbeth, only 5 behind Ricky Graham, who sits 5th all-time in that category. If Breyer comes back next year, I think it'd be pretty safe bet that he's going to pick up 5, maybe 6 wins and move into top 5 all time. An incredible year for Breyer. He's got a lot to think about in the offseason, becoming a dad. He's got other responsibilities ahead of him, but an amazing season for him. And there could just only be one champion. And this year it's the Estenson Group and Dallas Daniels on that Yamaha, which they get the first championship for Yamaha since 1974. I misspoke in the last video when I said 1975. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Sometimes it's wrong. I had to do some research on that. And, left a comment on the previous video to correct myself, and the broadcast team mentioned it as well. 51 years since Yamaha has had a championship in the twins class, and man, Dallas Daniels, wear that number 1 proud. We're looking forward to seeing that number 1 plate on the Yamaha coming to 2026. At least I would assume he would be back on the Essence and Yamahas for next year. Behind Dallas and Breyer in the championship, Brandon Robinson comes home third, ends the season on the box. And then Trent Lowe with that 4th place finish and coming on so strong late in the year. Trent ends up 4th in the championship, rookie of the year in the twins class, ends that season a few points ahead of Davis Fisher. Jared Vanderkooi comes home in 6th in points. Behind them, James Ott, Dan Bromley, Max Whale, and Declan Bender with the top 10 on the year. Over on the singles side of things, championships wrapped up, but several moving parts deeper in the field. And the guy that won the championship already, Tom Drane, he was just a notch above everyone all day long. Fastest in practice and qualifying, just seemed to have a leg up on the competition, and Drane has just been on another level. Chase Sadoff was able to push him, a couple of rounds out there in Sturgis, but ever since Chase's injury, it just felt like there was a gap back to the rest of the field. And Tom goes quick time again. Very impressive ride for Hunter Bauer. We talked about he needs to get into the top 10 on the night to be top 10 in the singles points. He qualified inside the top 5 on the charts, and a tough afternoon for Trevor Bruner back in 12th on the timesheets. We would have to see if Bruner could kind of replicate what he did earlier in the year, where qualifying wouldn't go so great, but he'd find himself in the mix later on in the night. Heat 1, Tom Drane, pretty easy victory. He gets the lead, pulls ahead of Cage Tabman and Terrence Santero, who would have a duel for second. Not the only time this would happen on the night. This race would get stopped a lap short after Bronson Pierce crashed in turns 3 and 4. Tom Drane had already taken the white flag, so the race would get called. And as riders were kind of slowing down coming across the line, you see Aiden Roos-Evans having a conversation with Cage Tabman. Aiden maybe not so happy about how this race started. Everybody kind of jockeying for a position coming off of turn 2, and Roos-Evans gets pushed up right into the wall there on the start of this race. So maybe a little conversation about that incident. In heat race number 2, Braden Fanders gets the whole shot. Hunter Bauer gets a really bad start. He gets pushed back all the way to 5th at one point in this heat race. But we see Trevor Bruner get a pretty decent start, and he's up there fighting with Jared Lowe and Bauer for a 3rd through 5th spot. Jared Lowe would slip the groove and drop back to 5th, giving Bruner 3rd in that heat race. Up front, Braden Fanders and Chad Coase would exchange the lead, and it would be Coase making the pass on Fanders to take this heat race victory. But Fanders locks into a dash for cash, and that we were lucky enough on the night to have Bill's Home Improvement and the Flat Track Superfan putting up some money for this challenge race for the singles riders. That race, though, Tom Drane, pretty straightforward, gets out front ahead of Coase, and Fanders would get by Cage Tabner for 3rd, and that's how they would finish. So Tom continues his perfect night, winning the Bill's Home Improvement Flat Track Superfan Challenge on the evening. In the last chance race, it would be Walker Porter for the Turner Racing Team picking up the last chance victory for the singles class. And of note, this doesn't matter to probably anybody but me, but of the 15 last chance races for the singles class this year, we had 14 different winners. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of a neat statistic. Walker Porter being the 14th of those riders to win a last chance race on the season. Outside of a transfer spot, McLean Drucker and Jacob Vanderkooi exchanged words after that race, seemed a little upset with each other. Those two riders would miss out on a transfer spot for the main event, and a few hand gestures after that singles LCQ. In the main event, this will be the first time Tom Drane would have some adversity to overcome on the night. Braden Fanders gets the whole shot. Drane gets kind of pinched. He ends up back in 4th and has some work to do in this main event. Cage Tabman would get by Braden Fanders early on and take the lead. Fanders into 2nd place. About that same time, Tom Drane got under Chad Coase and was able to take 3rd. And these 3 riders would start to pull away from a little battle back with Coase and Santero. Tom Drane able to start using a lower line going into 1 and 2 and kind of drift up the racetrack. You almost call that, I guess, a slider line in sprint car racing. But yeah, lower on his entry, going below the groove and drifting up the racetrack. He was able to get close to Fanders at times and eventually clear him and then start tracking down Tabman. Those 3 riders so close that even the battling with Drane and Fanders, Tabman wasn't able to break away. And Tom gets right on the rear wheel of Tabman. They exchange the lead in this race. And then with a minute left, we have the red flag come out as Trevor Bruner goes down in turns 3 and 4, which sets up a restart, a chance for some communication to be passed along and let Tabman know sort of what Drane was doing. On the restart, though, Tom Drane, just a brilliant move going into 1 and 2. He let Tabman kind of go up the racetrack. He got that bike stopped, and Drane cuts up underneath, gets by Tabman, goes into the lead, and would it be able to set the pace for the remainder of the race. behind Drane. Terrence Santero would make some moves, get by Tadman for second. And Terran looked really, really fast, but just not enough time to get a real attack on Tom Drane in this race. Drane comes home with the victory. Santero comes home second. Tadman brings it home third. Braden Fanders in fourth. And Chad Coase rounding out the top five ahead of Dalton Gauthier. Strong ride for Gauthier on the singles class before everything would go awry there on the twin later in the night. But Tom Drane, 8 wins also on the season in just 16 rounds, an average finish of 1.75 on the year. Just a dominating year for Tom, who really closed it out strong, winning 4 races in a row and 5 of the last 6. Wild that he went through the first 5 rounds without a victory, but once that first one fell, man, he was just on another level from everybody else. So Drane with the victory, wins the championship over Trevor Bruner, who even with that fall still had second place secured with no Chase Sadoff in the house. And then behind them, we get Santero and Tadman tied on points. So Santero's pass of Cage Tadman there in that main event gives them a tie for 4th in points. But Tadman's earlier wins in the season is the tiebreaker, and Cage Tadman gets not only Rookie of the Year, but 4th place in the singles points. And it's the best rookie year by a rider in the singles class since Jared Vanderkooi in 2014, at least from everything that I could dig up. And that year, Vanderkooi would also pick up 2 wins and finish 4th in points. And Jared also picked up a couple of basic twins victories or GNC2 twins victories on that season as well aboard Kawasaki. For Fanders, another top 5 on the season. He ends up 6th in points ahead of a tie between Aiden Roos-Evans and Jared Lowe. And behind them, we get to see Chad Coase ends up with a 9th place in the championship standings. And Hunter Bauer's top 10 on the night would give him 10th in the championship points. Walker Porter, after winning the last chance race, was able to bring home another top 10, and his rookie season comes to a close with a solid 8th place effort there on the racetrack. Build Train Race ladies were in the house for a double feature, 2 main events for those riders on the night, and that first main event was quite a show. Emma Gotch, Matisela Rodriguez, and Taya Little were definitely the class of the field on the night. They would have a 3-rider breakaway in this main event and a lot of swapping up front. Rodriguez was able to take the lead going into turn 3 on the second lap of the first main event. Taya Little able to work this higher line and really just roll the corners. One of the only riders able to do that, and she was picking up a lot of ground on her fellow Build Train race combatants and was able to get around Emma Gotch as well. And then Matisela Rodriguez was able to sort of move up and block that line at times going into 3 and 4, but on the final lap, Taya Little sends it off deep into turns 3 and 4, pulls even with Matisela, but Rodriguez able to hold her off in the drag race to the line by just 9/1000ths of a second. So Matisela Rodriguez gets that first victory of the night for the Build Train race class. Main event 2 rolls around, same front 3. Emma Gotch, Matisela Rodriguez, Taya Little up front, breaking away. But this time, Taya Little, again, rolling the outside, gets to the front and checks out. She would win this race by a very comfortable margin. But behind her, Rodriguez and Gotch had quite the battle for 2nd and 3rd throughout the end of this race. And it took a last lap pass by Emma Gotch and Matisela Rodriguez to get that 2nd spot on the night. Taya Little and Matisela both winning 2 races on the year, but Taya in the top 3 every single race. I don't know if they were giving out points or not. They don't have like a points breakdown on AFT's website, but Taya Little with a very strong season. Very scary crash during her year last year. Cool to see Taya bounce back, and hey, she's won DTX races up in Canada and gets a couple of wins here in the Build Train race class for American Flat Track. Really cool having this class as part of the sport. Love seeing them and the American V Twins, aka Hooligans, make special appearances. I would love to see maybe like an amateur showcase come back to AFT in the future as far as that 3rd, support class. The hand shift shootout was a neat little feature there in Lima. I don't know about having that at Springfield though, but that was a cool little feature there at Lima. So these support classes definitely vital to have just to kind of build the program and add another element to the series. All right, so international flair. We're going to do some Speedway GP talk now because, I love this sport. I had to pay for their streaming subscription because it wasn't on our local cable channel like Racer TV has done in the past, but it was well worth the price. I had it flipped up with the FIM Flat Track and Moto America during the day to start my Saturday, and man, I could hardly take my eyes off of the Speedway Grand Prix racing. It was Dan Bewley who was quickest in qualifying, and he could have potentially played spoiler in this title fight with Brady Kurtz and Bartosz Zmarzlik. Zmarzlik leading Kurtz by just 3 points coming into the finale. No sprint race on this weekend. It would be settled in your typical Grand Prix format. Kurtz was going to need somebody to get between himself and Smarslick if he was going to claim this championship. And Bewley was looking like a spoiler. He actually got the better of Kurtz in their opening ride, but Kurtz would bounce back, win a couple of heat races. Smarslick would be perfect through his first 3 heat races. A couple of other riders who looked like they might be able to play spoiler were Martin Vashlik, who was really strong early on, Andre Ledvedebs with a couple of wins and a second in his first couple of rides, and Michael Jepsen Jensen. Yeah, try to say that fast a bunch of times. Wild card entry on the night. Also, winner of the Lit Kit. His gear was next to none on the night. Really cool riding gear for Jepsen Jensen, and he was definitely mixing things up, getting a couple of heat race victories, and was actually able to lock into an LCQ spot after struggling during his first 2 heat races. But once he got things figured out, he was fast on the night. 4th round of heat races. Heat race 16 concludes with quite a duel. We've got Smarslick and Kurtz, plus Vashlik and Max Frick thrown into the mix as well. Our first Kurtz v. Smarslick sighting on the night. And this time it would be Smarslick getting the early lead, but Kurtz gets around the outside of him and would claim the victory in this heat race. So big for Kurtz's confidence, big little optics boost there, seeing Kurtz ahead of Smarslick. However, as we mentioned, somebody was going to have to get between them. Following all the heat race competition, it was Brady Kurtz and Bartosz Smarslick who would lock into the finale. What else is new? The best riders on the year, they get those 2 lock-in spots. Dan Bewley had a chance to knock Kurtz into a last chance race, but picked up 0 points in his final ride. He would have to go to a last chance race. That he would make the most of. Bewley would win his last chance race, and so would Jepsen Jensen, both of those riders joining Smarslick and Kurtz in the finale. So could Bewley, could Jepsen Jensen get in the mix and help out Brady Kurtz on this night? Off the start, it was Kurtz getting out front. Smarslick gets shuffled back a little bit, but is able to make a good move coming off of turn 2, gets into second spot. Kurtz out front and Smarslick getting comfortable in second. Bewley and Jepsen Jensen were close to Smarslick, but never close enough to really get underneath him and make anything happen and play spoiler. So as Brady Kurtz pulls away, wins this race, he gets his 5th consecutive victory, a record for Speedway Grand Prix. Nobody has won more than 4 in a row. Kurtz had tied Tony Rickardson's record for that after his victory at the last round, but Kurtz with 5 in a row, the only rider to do that, caps his season with that 5th consecutive victory. But Smarslick comes home second, and for Bartosz, he gets the championship by 1 single point. His 4th consecutive Speedway Grand Prix title, his 6th of his career. Smarslick just the GOAT of Speedway Grand Prix. And we haven't had Laguda and Emil Sayfutinov the past few years with the Russian riders not racing. But Smarslick has been the best rider in Speedway Grand Prix. And this is the first year that anybody was able to truly challenge him all the way to the finish. Smarslick normally able to win several more Grand Prix and have a pretty comfortable advantage coming into the final rounds. But man, he and Kurtz, what a battle they had throughout this entire season, especially on the back end where Kurtz was just a superior rider. Now, when we look at the breakdown of their points in sprint races, Smarslick was able to score 10, Kurtz able to score 9. In Grand Prix, an even 173 points apiece. But that one extra point, that sprint race, we look back to the last round where Smarslick picks up 2 points in the sprint race and Kurtz unable to qualify for that. Basically the difference in their championship. So I don't know if I love sprint racing in GP, Speedway, or MotoGP. But man, what a title fight. What an epic encounter for these riders. And I can't wait to see what next year brings with these 2 title combatants. And also, Michael Jepsen Jensen gets 3rd as a wild card. He actually qualifies for the Speedway Grand Prix field next year. And Robert Lambert would secure that 7th in championship, which also gets him an automatic lock-in to next year's Grand Prix field as well. How they're going to settle the rest of that, I am not completely privy to. I have to look into that at a future video. But Bartosz Smarslick picks up the championship over Brady Kurtz by a single point. And man, if you guys aren't on the Speedway Grand Prix train, hop aboard that, because this racing coming into 2026 is going to be absolutely thrilling. And you can obviously go back and watch all the highlights on YouTube or check some of that stuff out. Speedway Grand Prix is amazing to follow, and what a championship they had on the year. FIM Flat Track, the penultimate round of the season there in Vasad, Hungary. And boy, this track was really, really racy, despite getting really dusty at times toward the end of the heat race rounds and seeming a lot drier than what I've witnessed in the past with their surfaces. This track provided a lot of great action, a lot of amazing battles throughout the heat races, many of which came down to the final couple of laps. Unfortunately, there was quite a bit of carnage as well, several riders going down pretty heavily, but I was lucky to see everybody get up and walk away from those instances. And man, Sammy Halbert was just on a mission this day. He came out swinging, winning 3 of his 4 heat races, even coming from the back row to win 1. The only time where he was bested would be in a contest where Erwin Krajcevich had a front row start and Halbert had to come from the back. And Halbert and Tim Neve ended up in quite a little battle with Halbert playing great defense and chopping Neve going into the corners better than a master chef could. Sammy ends up top of the points chart coming out of the heat races, gets that first pick in the final. And Sammy actually bested Krajcevich a couple of times throughout the heat race competition. Tim Neve was really good, but a German rider, Marius Kircher, put together a really strong day, picking up a couple of wins throughout heat race competition. Would be 3rd overall in heat race points coming into the final. Kircher, a little different style than what we saw from Neve and Halbert and Krajcevich. And Halbert and Neve have more of that traditional flat track style, whereas Kircher's looks a little stiffer. He and Andrej Svedjic have a similar style when they're racing. But nonetheless, coming into the final, it was Kircher, Neve, Krajcevich, Halbert, 4 wide coming off of turn 2, going into 3 and 4. Halbert able to kind of stuff it under Krajcevich, push him a little bit wide, get into 3rd, and then make a just incredible move past Neve and Kircher, coming through 1 and 2 on that second lap. And once Halbert was in the lead, he was gone. Sammy checking out in this one, gets the victory. Tim Neve ends up coming home 2nd. Krajcevich would get past Kircher into 3rd, and then Svedjic would move up to 4th. Kircher ended up falling back to 5th place on the day. But Sammy Halbert, back-to-back wins, and with the dominating day, ends up taking over the points lead. Halbert now leads Krajcevich by 6 points heading into next weekend's finale in Pardubice in the Czech Republic. So we'll have to follow along and see if Sammy can bring home back-to-back championships there in the FIM circuit. And look, if you guys aren't following along with the series, it's free. There's not a lot of things that we can get for free. FIMmoto.tv is your place to be for all the action. You can go back, watch all the old races that have happened this season. So tune in and check it out. Support our boy Sammy as he looks to put on for the U.S. and keep that #1 plate stateside there in the FIM series. Staying outside the United States, we're going to quickly touch on the Flat Track Canada finale that was up in Georgian Downs. And this place looks amazing. This track just looks so sick. Cushion half mile. Just looks like an incredible track to witness racing at. Good support there. A lot of good riders turned out for that. It would be Jordan Bolak who got the victory in the DTX Expert class, and Gabriel Bosver gets the victory in the Open Expert finale over Loic Nadu and Jordan Bolak in that Open Expert finale. But 15-year-old Liam Caskey brings home the Open Expert Championship. He'll be carrying that #1 plate for Flat Track Canada next year. A strong ride in the early part of the season. Built up a really commanding points lead in that Open Expert class and brings home the championship. Though he didn't hit the podium on this night, strong consistency throughout the year for Liam Caskey, and he'll be wearing that #1 plate. Man, at just only 15 years old. Hopefully, when Liam turns 16, we get to see him come down to the States and contest a few American Flat Track rounds. Would love to see he and Loic and Jordan Bolak and Gabriel Bosworth. Love to see all these Canadian riders get to make a run down here in the States. Justin Jones was able to go up there and compete there on the night up there in Georgian Downs. And also, we haven't talked about it all year, but Chris Evans picking up a win in the 40-plus class. Evans has been, a rider that we got to see here in American Flat Track get a national win at Lima one year, and he's still mixing it up there with the top riders in Canada. So props to Chris Evans for a victory there. And the Hazel family picked up several wins throughout the 85cc class and the intermediate DTX and open intermediate class on the evening. Brody Hazel with a really strong season there up in Canada in the intermediate classes. We touched on it last week. Southeast Flat Track was going to be on Sports Action TV. Their action there at Coleridge, and kind of low rider counts, but still I got to support our Southeast friends. It was a big night for Shelton Brooks, who had a very comfortable victory over Robert Lewis in the sportsman and the expert classes on the night. It looked like Robert was going to get the better of Shelton in the hooligan class, but with a couple laps to go, Shelton gets underneath Robert going into 1 and 2 there at Coleridge, and Lewis looked to have a bit of a malfunction on his motorcycle there and dropped way back, so he was unable to answer Shelton's pass. So Brooks 3 for 3 on the night in those classes. Also a very active night for the Nickens family as Ellen Nickens comes back from an injury she sustained at Amateur Nationals, picks up a win in the 65cc class on the night. Brother Jaden would be victorious in the 125-250 class on the evening. And he would also give Dylan Barris kind of a run there in the open amateur class. Tough start, but keeping pace with Dylan in that open amateur class for a runner-up spot. Dylan would have a comfortable victory in the 450 amateur class, winning both of the big amateur classes on the night. But back to the Nickens family. Jaden would be victorious in the 85cc class over Drew Eldred and Wade Lockamy after a very impressive move going into turns 3 and 4. Jaden splits those riders and takes the lead, and he would run away with that one. It was really cool seeing Drew Eldred back in action. I haven't gotten to see a whole lot of him. Last year's AMA Youth Rider of the Year at Amateur Nationals, but haven't gotten to see a whole lot of Drew Eldred this year. So cool seeing the 302 back in action. He was actually able to pick up a victory in the 0 to 200 class after a bad start from Jaden Nickens, kind of handicapped him in that race. But Jaden knifing through the field and got really, really close to Eldred late in that race. So with a couple more laps, who knows what would have happened. But a win for Drew Eldred on the night there in the 0 to 200 class. Obviously, several other classes on the night. We're not going to really dive into that. I actually, at the time of recording this, don't have official results in front of me. Just a few things I picked up from watching the broadcast there on Sports Action TV. Their series finale will be at Mid-Carolina Speedway in October, so we'll head down to that and check out how that series comes to a close. Very dramatic championship bouts last year. I think several of their points battles are a little more decided this year going into that finale, but hey, we'll keep you guys guessing and see how those points shake out and what happens there in their finale in October. A bunch of our flat track friends were in action in Moto America and in the storylines as well. In the Stock 1000 class, JD Beach and Jason Uribe had an outside chance at catching Andrew Lee for that Stock 1000 championship, but it was going to take a lot of misfortune. Uribe and Beach, though, gave us quite a show in both races. I'm so used to saying main events. Day one, Saturday there at COTA, Uribe and Beach pull away, have quite a battle throughout this race, and on the last turn of the last lap, Beach able to get underneath Uribe after Uribe seemed to be kind of pushing a bit under braking. Beach seemed to have him a little bit covered in the braking zones here. Uribe kind of forcing the issue there coming into the braking corners. And on the final turn, Beach able to get underneath him as Uribe kind of overcooks it there in turn 20. And Beach able to pick up the victory there with Andrew Lee finishing 4th. It would take a 5th place finish and a win from Beach, or take a win from Beach and a 5th place from Andrew Lee for Beach to clinch that championship or take it away from Lee on the last day. I think my math's right on that. Nonetheless, Andrew Lee would come home 4th in both races and clinch that Stock 1000 championship. But up front, once again in race 2, Jason Uribe, JD Beach pull away. Uribe had a pretty solid lead throughout most of this race, but JD was able to run him down, make a pass as we exited 1 going into turn 2 there on that circuit there in COTA. And later on, Uribe answers back, actually gets by him down the long back straightaway, but has an issue downshifting going into that hard braking zone at the end of the backstretch. Beach is able to get underneath them and pull away for a comfortable weekend sweep there in the Stock 1000 class. So congrats to JD on that. He comes home just 2 points shy of that Stock 1000 championship. Andrew Lee picking up his 3rd of those championships, but a very tight battle for them on the season. Now, JD Beach would actually come home with the Superbike Cup number 1 plate for his efforts there in the Superbike class on a stock bike, which I guess that's good to segue us to the Superbike class. And on day 1, Josh Herron, Cam Beaubier, and Bobby Fong had quite the battle at the front of the pack there. Coming into the last lap, it would be Fong diving underneath Beaubier. In 19, Beaubier would get back underneath him, answer it, try to dive under Herron going into turn 20, but once again, run a little bit wide. Herron would get back underneath Beaubier and pick up the victory on the first day, and Beaubier would just barely hold off Bobby Fong to claim 2nd place and pick up a few valuable championships. Beaubier came in 17 points behind Fong for the Superbike championship in this class. On the second day, Beaubier and Bobby Fong would pull away after Josh Herron had a big moment coming out of the S's there and kind of separated himself from there. He would have to battle with Sean Dillon Kelly and Jake Gagne for 3rd, with Beaubier and Bobby Fong up front. It looked like Beaubier had this race kind of under control, but a huge, huge moment at one point for Beaubier, who basically had the bike laying on the ground, was somehow able to save it. And Bobby Fong took the lead briefly. A lap later, Beaubier would answer and get back ahead of him and be able to hold off Fong for the win on day 2 there in COTA. And Beaubier trims that points lead to single digits. Cam Beaubier, Bobby Fong, they take their title fight to the finale of Moto America. Josh Herron sits 22 points adrift of Bobby Fong in the Superbike class. Over in Super Sport, It would be a weekend sweep for Matthew Skoltz as he's able to extend his championship lead over PJ Jacobson to 21 points. Jacobson coming home third and second in that weekend. A good battle with Blake Davis on the first day. Davis actually leading the Super Sport class on day 2, but a crash while leading that knocked him out of contention there on the second day. Behind Skoltz and behind Jacobson on the second day, Kayla Yakov, Ty Scott, and Cam Peterson were in a battle all the way to the end. Came down to the final quarter, and Cam Peterson, after a violent crash on the first day, riding through injury, he's able to survive the tussle with Yakov and Scott to come home third on the second day. Kayla would be fourth. Ty Scott comes home fifth there in the Super Sport class on the second day. Now, a couple of championships that got clinched. First, we'll go with the King of the Baggers class. Hayden Gillum victorious in the race on day 1, but Kyle Wyman able to lock up that championship on the first day. And Wyman and Gillum would have a brief little run-in off the start in the King of the Baggers race on day 2. It would knock Gillum back a little bit. Wyman would chase off after Troy Herfoss, and Gillum would also kind of have a little close contact with Loris Baz on this first lap as well. Frustrating first lap for Hayden Gillum in this race, but Kyle Wyman, Troy Herfoss, Hayden Gillum, and Loris Baz out front, kind of controlling this race. And then it would be, we start to see riders drop off. Gillum gets into second, but he loses the front, which gives second place to Wyman, who was chasing down Herfoss in the closing stages of this race, but he too would go down on the final lap and give Herfoss a good little advantage over Loris Baz. Troy Herfoss comes home victorious in the Baggers race on day 2 over Loris Baz, and Bradley Smith settles into third there. But Wyman, even with that crash on day 2, like we said, he secured the championship. He too is a new father as well. Congrats to Kyle Wyman. And Wyman, somebody we got the fortune of seeing in his flat track days when he was a pro sport rider back in 2006. We got to see him at Oglethorpe Speedway Park there, and now Kyle Wyman is a Mission King of the Baggers championship for Moto America. Another championship that got locked up on the weekend was Alessandro DeMario's Talent Cup Championship, a weekend sweep for DeMario, who was just on another level all weekend long. He was able to take home the victory over Bodie Page on the first day, and then Ella Dreyer and Sam Drane had a good little battle going to the final corner of that race. Dreyer really fighting to close the door on Drane. They would go down in the final corner, but Drane was able to pick the bike up and finish third on this first day. Drane fighting a lot of bike chatter on that machine on that first day. And then on the second day, we would see DeMario challenged by Kinsei Matsudara, Hank Vosberg, and Bodie Page early on in this race. A mechanical for Page would take him out of this race. Vosberg and Matsudara would go at it with DeMario early in this race, but eventually mistakes by both riders would give the lead to DeMario, who would check out and leave them behind. On track, Vosberg and Matsudara were duking it out for that spot, but a penalty would be assessed to Matsudara, who would end up having to take third in the running order. Even though he finished second on the track, that penalty applied. He falls back to third in the running order. And then coming home fourth, getting the better of Ella Dreyer and Sam Drane on day 2 was Cody Kopp. So a fourth place finish for Cody after he lost the chain again on the first day. Chains and Cody, man, they just don't go well together. But Cody bounces back for a solid fourth place finish there on the second day. As we said, DeMario's weekend sweep grants him the championship in the Talent Cup. He also was the Twins Cup champion on the year, and he will be moving up to Super Sport and will be a rider to keep an eye on at still just only 16 years of age. An incredibly talented rider there in Moto America. All right, so that brings a close to things as we look ahead. Even though the American Flat Track season is done, we move on to more racing in the offseason. The Mission Foods CTR Flat Track Series finale rounds 8 and 9 will be taking place September 19th and 20th at Mid-Carolina Speedway in Nices, South Carolina. I will be there. I can't wait for this. Can't wait to see these championship battles come to a close there in Nices, South Carolina at one of the most, just closest tracks to my heart. I'm so glad this facility was reopened and we're getting to see some more racing there this coming weekend. Additionally, for riders who aren't able to attend that, Brad Baker will be hosting will be part of an event up there at the Croswell Half Mile in Michigan. They've already started prep for that race taking place on September 20th as well. And the Mile High Showdown going on in Colorado that weekend for any riders out west who need a place to race there and aren't able to make the trip cross country to either Brad's race or Corey's race. We also touched on the FIM Flat Track finale taking place in the Czech Republic. Can Sammy Halbert repeat as champion over there, or will Irvin Krajcevic take home another championship? Those two will come down to the wire. So much racing action to keep an eye on this coming weekend. We hope you guys are able to make it out to the races. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Please support those who are doing podcasts, YouTube channels, anything around the sport. It means the world. And once again, man, we bring a close to the Progressive American Flat Track season. It's been so fun covering this series this year. I will not hide the fact that I am not a racer. I am strictly a fan. So my opinions might not mean a darn thing to anybody, but I'm just trying to offer a perspective and provide some content around the sport. And it's been exhausting doing these YouTube videos, but it's also been really cool just to get to talk about the sport and create some kind of engagement with you guys. I appreciate your support on this channel, and just thank you to all the riders who have been so receptive to us and have welcomed us into your pit areas. Thank you to everybody who's looked at this channel, and whether you've subscribed, liked, disliked, all the comments, whether you want to roast my appearance or roast my takes or provide support for the channel. I appreciate the engagement regardless. Thank you so much to everybody who's given this channel a chance. And congratulations to Dallas Daniels and Tom Drane and the entire Estenson team on your championships on the year, a sweep of the American Flat Track season for 2025. Maybe the prediction a lot of people had, but certainly not the path that we thought it would be. And again, a huge congratulations to Briar Bauman on a record year for him. We'll have to see what comes for Briar in 2026, but I would love for he and Dallas to run it back and create this amazing rivalry for that championship. And who knows what could happen with riders like Brandon Robinson, Davis Fisher, Trent Lowe, another year on the Honda. Silly season is always wild because I really just never know what anybody's going to be doing. It doesn't seem like hardly anybody gets multi-year deals in this sport. So I'll have to keep an eye and see what happens in silly season. Now, that's going to wrap it up for us. Next week, we'll talk about the FIM finale. We'll talk about the Mission CTR Flat Track series and anything else that we're able to get our eyeballs on. Thank you guys again so much for the support on this channel. And yeah, I guess we'll talk to you next week. And if you're at Mid-Carolina, we'll see you there. And come out and say what's up. Or, hey, come out and roast me. Whatever you got to do. We're just glad that you're out there supporting flat track racing, and we can't wait to be back at the tracks. Love you guys.